Here with reaction, former Speaker of the House and author of Trump and the American Future, Newt Gingrich. All right, so Speaker, you've had about a week and a half to reflect on what we saw on election night and the days beyond. What is your feeling now?
Look, I think you pretty well nailed it. This is a fraud. The numbers don't make any sense. And I began writing about this about 3 months ago. Republicans focus on campaigns. Democrats focus on elections. Nancy, the Speaker sent a signal when they introduced H.R. 1 at the very beginning in 2019, because H.R. 1 was an outline of how to steal an election. I did several podcasts about it. And if you look step by step, even though they haven't been able to pass it, different places have done things. I just learned today, for example, that the Republican Secretary of State in Georgia signed a consent decree that does not allow us to check and verify absentee ballots. Now, how insane is that?
It's insane.
And you go through item after item, and what they were doing is very simple. Everybody gets to vote as often as they want, with no identity, as late as they want, including after the election. And all of it will be covered up so that nobody will know what happened. Now, that's the heart of the Democratic Party's election manual. And we're watching it play out in Atlanta. And notice there are always big cities. In Atlanta, in Philadelphia, in Pittsburgh, in Detroit, in Milwaukee. All of these things are coming about exactly the same. In Nevada, the whole state was involved because the governor and the Democratic legislature passed a series of rules. I've been told by former Attorney General Adam Laxalt that there are 600,000 ballots in Nevada that no Republican has ever seen. Now this has to be. People shouldn't give up until every ballot has been looked at by two human beings, one a Republican, the other a Democrat, and we find out how many holes there are in the system. And frankly, in 5 of the 6 states that are contested, you have Republican legislatures, and they ought to spend early next year changing the election laws for the future and eliminating this stuff. But it also proves, if I might, why the Georgia Senate runoffs are important, because if we get Senator Perdue and Senator Loeffler reelected and McConnell's in charge of the Senate, we're going to be able to continue to reform things. If they win with their 2 radical candidates and Schumer's in charge, they'll try to pass a national bill to make the whole country behave in the crazy way that these cities have behaved.
Yeah, and you'll never win a national election again as a Republican. But you're right about the state legislatures. They have to make this a priority from the jump beginning next year in the first legislative session. You cannot have tens of millions of ballots floating around. It's just too much opportunity for mischief. There's always been a little election fraud in every election, but because it's mostly people voting in person, you just don't have access and opportunity the way you have in a COVID election. And what the Democrats, I predict, will do is make every national election a COVID election and say, hey, this worked great for us this time. Let's do it again in 2024, and let's pump these states with so many ballots, you're not going to be able to have a chain of custody, and loosen up these rules because, we want everyone to vote and we want to make it so easy, but you're also making it easy to cheat. And they need to get their hands on this, or else this is going to doom the Republican Party. Because as you said, a lot of this stuff is happening in these deep blue precincts where there's no transparency and there's so many more votes coming in as opposed to those little smaller red counties where there's not the sheer volume of ballots.
Well, and every legislature should be reminded that the Constitution says explicitly it is the legislature, not the Secretary of State, not the court. It is the legislature that's responsible. And in these states, frankly, the legislature ought to demand to be called back into special session. They ought to take charge, and they ought to make sure that we get an honest count.
Why aren't they doing that? Why does it seem like the president's team is the only one really fighting this? It seems like everybody else has just accepted it and moved on, and they don't even care if there were lots of fraudulent ballots cast.
I've been active in the Republican Party for a very long time. So I think I can say with some knowledge, Republicans play badminton, Democrats play pro football.
I think you're accurate there, Speaker.
So Republicans get, yeah, you know, but frankly, I don't understand why every one of these legislatures is not demanding to be called back into session. I'm told that Governor Kemp refuses to call a special session. I can't for the life of me understand why a Republican governor would preside over massive theft and do nothing to stop it.
I agree. All right. Speaker Gingrich, there he is. Thank you very much. Let's start playing some football, people.